The red sun of Kepler 442b cast long shadows across the crash site, as smoke still rose from the twisted metal that used to be the cargo ship Lucky Strike. Amy Rodriguez groaned as she pushed herself up from the pilot's seat, her head pounding like someone was hammering nails into her skull. Blood trickled down her forehead from a cut above her left eye. Her ankle screamed in pain when she tried to stand, sprained, maybe broken. The ship's emergency lights flickered weakly, casting strange shadows on the cracked walls around her. Through the shattered viewport, she could see the alien landscape stretching out in all directions. Purple grass swayed in the wind and strange blue trees dotted the horizon. Amy checked her watch. 3 days since the engine failure had sent her spiraling down toward this forgotten world. 3 days since her last contact with any human settlement. The emergency beacon was nothing but sparking wires and melted plastic now. No one was coming to help her. She limped through the cargo hold, taking inventory of what survived the crash. Most of her cargo was ruined or scattered across the landscape, but some things remained intact. A basic survival kit with water purification tablets and emergency rations, a small medical kit, and scattered around the floor, pieces of what used to be an expensive dining set made from genuine earth oak. One piece caught her attention. A table leg about 3 feet long and solid as a rock. The wood was smooth and well-crafted, made by someone who knew their trade. It had broken off cleanly during the crash, leaving one end flat and the other slightly pointed where it had snapped. Amy picked it up, testing its weight. Heavy enough to do damage, light enough to swing quickly. She smiled grimly. Her grandfather had been a carpenter back on Earth. He would have appreciated the irony of his work becoming a weapon on an alien world. Far above the planet's atmosphere, Commander Zethkar of the Veltai Hunting Guild studied the contract details on his ship's main screen. The target was simple enough. One human female age 32 cargo pilot. Her ship had crashed 3 days ago on the frontier world below. The bounty was substantial, more than enough to fund his crew's operations for the next cycle. Zethkar was 7 feet tall with gray-scaled skin and 4 arms. His people had been hunting dangerous prey across the galaxy for centuries. They were known in 3 sectors as the most efficient bounty hunters money could buy. They had never failed to bring in a target, dead or alive. He selected his 4 best operatives for the mission. Sylth, his tracker, with enhanced sensory implants that could follow a scent trail across continents. 4th, the heavy weapons specialist whose plasma cannon could punch through starship armor. Krina, the stealth operative, invisible to most sensors when she activated her cloaking field. And Molodek, their tech expert, who could hack any system or jam any communication. The briefing was quick. 1 injured human on a hostile world, probably hiding in her wrecked ship or wandering the wilderness looking for rescue. Simple retrieval mission. They would be back in orbit within hours. As their shuttle descended through the planet's atmosphere, Zethkar felt confident. Humans were known to be resourceful, but they were still just soft-skinned mammals from a single world. What could 1 injured pilot do against 5 professional hunters? Down on the surface, Amy had made several important discoveries. The local water was safe to drink after purification. Several types of the purple grass were edible, though they tasted like cardboard. The blue trees produced a sap that worked as a mild antiseptic for wounds. More importantly, she had found tracks. Not animal tracks, but something else. Boot prints in the soft soil near a stream. Too large and the wrong shape to be human. Someone or something was already on this world, and they had been near her crash site recently. Amy's military training kicked in. She had served 2 years in the Colonial Defense Force before becoming a cargo pilot. Basic combat training, survival skills, and tactical thinking. She might be injured and alone, but she was not helpless. She gathered her supplies and moved away from the wreck. Staying near the crash site was asking for trouble. Whatever had left those tracks might come back, and she wanted to choose the ground for any meeting. The alien sun was setting when Amy found what she was looking for. A small canyon about 2 miles from the crash site, with caves carved into the rock walls by centuries of wind and water. Defensible positions, multiple escape routes, and a clear view of anyone approaching from the plains below. She made camp in the largest cave, deep enough to hide a fire but with good ventilation. As darkness fell, she could see lights in the sky. A ship, moving in a search pattern over the crash site, not a rescue ship. The movement was wrong, too aggressive, too focused. Amy gripped the wooden table leg tighter. Whatever was coming for her, it was not here to help. She had survived 3 days on an alien world with nothing but her wits and basic supplies. Now she would find out if that was enough to survive what was coming next. The ship's lights moved closer to her position, scanning the landscape with powerful beams. Amy retreated deeper into the cave system, moving carefully to avoid making noise on the loose rock. Her ankle throbbed with every step, but she ignored the pain. She found a narrow passage that led to a second cave, smaller but with 3 different exits, perfect for what she had in mind. If something was hunting her, she would not make it easy. Humans had not become the dominant species on Earth by running from predators. They had done it by becoming better predators themselves. Amy Rodriguez settled down to wait, the oak table leg across her knees. Outside, alien stars wheeled overhead, cold and distant. But she was not thinking about the vastness of space or how far she was from home. She was thinking about angles of attack, kill zones, and how to turn every disadvantage into a weapon. The hunt was about to begin, but the hunters had made one critical error. They assumed they were tracking prey. What they were actually tracking was something much more dangerous. They were tracking a human who had decided to fight back. The Veltai hunting shuttle touched down near the wreckage of the Lucky Strike, just as the alien sun began to rise. Commander Zethkar emerged first, his forearms moving with practiced efficiency as he checked his weapons and equipment. Behind him came his team, each one a specialist in their field of death. Sylth crouched near the crash site, his enhanced senses already picking up traces of their target. His implants could detect chemical signatures that were days old, following scent trails like a bloodhound from Earth's ancient past. He moved in slow circles around the wreck, building a picture of what had happened. She survived the impact, he reported in the clicking language of his people. Injured but mobile. Left the crash site yesterday, heading inland toward the water source. Vorth hefted his plasma cannon, a weapon that could melt through starship armor. Why did she leave the ship? Stupid prey always stays near the crash, waiting for rescue. Krina activated her scanning equipment, her form shimmering slightly as her cloaking field powered up. Maybe this one is smarter than most, or more desperate. Muldek was examining the wreckage with his technical sensors. Emergency beacon destroyed in the crash. No distress signals transmitted. If she is smart, she knows no rescue is coming. Zethkar nodded approvingly. A target that knew it was alone might be more dangerous, but it was also more predictable. Desperation made prey do foolish things. Tracker. We finish this quickly and collect our payment. The trail was easy to follow at first. Amy had left clear signs of her passage through the purple grass, broken stems, and disturbed soil, marking her path toward the distant hills. But as they moved further from the crash site, Sylth began to notice something odd. Commander, he called out, stopping beside a cluster of blue trees. Look at this. The trees had been damaged, but not randomly. Branches had been broken off at specific points, creating what looked like natural debris but arranged in a pattern. Anyone following the trail would have to step over or around the obstacles, channeling them into specific positions. Trap? Vorth asked, raising his plasma cannon. Sylth extended his sensory implants, tasting the air and reading chemical traces. No, something else. She is preparing. They found more signs as they followed the trail. Stones arranged to create noise if disturbed. Patches of soft ground that would show footprints clearly. Small piles of rocks that could be easily knocked over by someone passing too close. Not traps exactly, but warning systems. This human knows we are following her, Krina observed, her voice carrying a note of respect. She is turning her retreat into an intelligence-gathering operation. Zethkar felt the first stirring of unease. Most prey ran blindly when hunted, making mistakes that made them easy to track and capture. This target was thinking, planning, preparing for confrontation rather than simply trying to escape. The trail led them to a canyon system carved into the red rock of the hills. Narrow passages wound between tall walls, creating a maze of potential hiding spots and ambush positions. Sylth paused at the entrance, his implants working overtime to analyze the chemical traces. She entered here 6 hours ago, he reported. Trail leads deeper into the canyon. Multiple paths, many places to hide. Standard sweep formation, Zethkar ordered. Muldek, scan for any energy signatures. Krina, activate full stealth. Vorth, watch for ambush positions. Sylth, take point with tracking. They moved into the canyon like the professional hunters they were, each one covering specific angles and approaches. But Amy Rodriguez had been busy during her 6 hours in the canyon. She had explored every passage, mapped every cave, and identified every defensive position. More importantly, she had studied the entrance. The canyon had only one way in, which meant her hunters would have to come through a narrow choke point. She had positioned herself in a cave overlooking that entrance, watching and waiting. Amy saw them coming long before they saw her. 5 alien figures moving with military precision through the canyon entrance. Big ones armed with weapons that looked advanced and deadly. Professional soldiers or bounty hunters, not random scavengers. She counted their weapons, studied their movement patterns, identified their leader by how the others positioned themselves around him. The one with 4 arms and scaled skin was clearly in charge. The one with sensory equipment was the tracker. The big one with the energy weapon was heavy support. The shimmer in the air that appeared and disappeared was probably stealth technology. The 5th one carried technical equipment. Amy gripped the oak table leg tighter. 5 professional hunters against 1 injured human with a piece of broken furniture. The odds were not good, but humans had faced bad odds before and found ways to win. The key was not to fight fair. The key was to fight smart. Sylth moved ahead of the group, following her scent trail through the winding passages of the canyon. His enhanced senses told him their target was close, probably hiding in one of the many caves that dotted the canyon walls. He moved carefully but confidently. After all, what could one unarmed human do against a Veltai hunter? The answer came when he stepped around a bend in the passage and found himself facing a narrow ledge that led to a cave entrance. The scent trail led directly up the rocky path. Perfect place for cornered prey to make a last stand. Sylth climbed the ledge confidently, his implants telling him the human was definitely in the cave ahead. He could smell her fear, her exhaustion, her desperation. This would be over soon. Amy waited until he was halfway up the ledge before she moved. She came out of concealment not from the obvious cave he was approaching, but from a hidden position behind a rock formation, where she had been watching the entire approach. The table leg whistled through the air in a perfect arc. Sylth's enhanced reflexes saved his life, but not his shoulder. The solid oak caught him just below his primary joint, dislocating the limb with a wet popping sound. He screamed and spun around, trying to bring his weapon to bear with his remaining good arm. Amy was already moving, using the table leg like a lever to hook behind his ankle and send him tumbling off the ledge. He hit the canyon floor hard, his weapon skittering away across the rocks. Before he could recover, Amy was on him, the pointed end of the broken table leg pressed against his throat. "Stay down," she said quietly. "Move and you die." Sylth looked up into her eyes and saw something that made his blood run cold. This was not the desperate gaze of cornered prey. This was the calm, calculating stare of a predator that had just taken its first victim. 1 down, 4 to go. Krina found Sylth 30 minutes later, unconscious and tied up with strips of fabric torn from his own equipment harness. His shoulder was dislocated and he had a massive bruise across his throat. But he was alive. Barely. "Commander?" she whispered into her communication device. "We have a problem." The response came back immediately. "Report. Sylth is down. Alive but unconscious. Dislocated shoulder, possible concussion. He has been neutralized." A long pause. Then Zethkar's voice, harder now and much more focused. "By the human?" "Appears so. Signs of struggle. His weapon is missing." She took his tracking equipment too. Zethkar felt something he had not experienced in decades of hunting. Uncertainty. 1 of his best operatives had been taken, down by an unarmed human female with a sprained ankle. This was not how the hunt was supposed to go. "Pull back to defensive positions," he ordered. "We regroup and reassess. This target is more dangerous than anticipated." But Amy Rodriguez was not giving them time to regroup. She had studied their communication patterns during the attack on Sylth. Short-range radio, encrypted but using standard protocols. Now she had the tracker's equipment. She could monitor their signals and track their movements. She also had his weapon, though she was not sure how to use it effectively. The alien technology was too unfamiliar, too likely to malfunction in her hands. Better to stick with what worked. The table leg had proven itself against one hunter. It would have to be enough for the others. Moldek was setting up scanning equipment in a defensive position when Amy struck next. The tech specialist was focused on his instruments, trying to locate their target using energy signature detection and motion sensors. His equipment was sophisticated and powerful, but it had one major weakness. It required him to stay in one place while operating it. Amy had spent 2 hours moving through the canyon system, using passages too narrow for the larger aliens to follow easily. She approached from above, climbing down the canyon wall using handholds she had identified during her earlier exploration. The alien was directly below her, surrounded by expensive technical equipment that hummed and beeped as it searched for her energy signature. Amy almost felt sorry for him. He was looking for her electronic devices, trying to track metal and energy emissions. But Amy had abandoned everything electronic except the stolen communication device. She was hunting with Stone Age technology and tactics older than civilization. She dropped silently onto the ledge behind him, the oak table leg ready in her hands. But Moldek was quicker than she expected. He spun around as she landed, one of his scanning devices swinging toward her like a weapon. Amy rolled sideways, avoiding the improvised club, and came up swinging. The table leg caught the scanning device and shattered it into sparks and broken circuits. Moldek stumbled backward, reaching for another piece of equipment. That was when Amy triggered the trap she had spent an hour preparing. The rocks above the alien's position had been carefully undermined, held in place by a few key stones that could be dislodged with precisely applied force. Amy had used her boot knife to carve a weak point in the supporting structure, turning a stable cliff face into a controlled avalanche waiting to happen. She struck the release point with the end of the table leg. The entire section of canyon wall came down in a thunderous cascade of stone and dust. Moldek had time for one short scream before tons of rock buried him in his expensive equipment. Amy wiped dust from her eyes and checked the communication device she had taken from Sylth. The other hunters were shouting to each other in their alien language, confusion and alarm clear in their voices even through the encryption. 2 down, 3 to go. Vorth was no longer taking chances. The death of Moldek had convinced him that this human was not ordinary prey. She was something else entirely, something that fought like the ancient predators from his people's nightmare stories. He would treat her accordingly. The heavy weapons specialist took position at the mouth of the canyon, his plasma cannon charged and ready. If the target wanted to get out, she would have to come through him. And when she did, he would turn her into superheated vapor with one shot from his weapon. The cannon was a beautiful piece of technology, capable of generating temperatures hotter than the surface of most stars. It could punch through starship armor or melt rock into glass. Nothing biological could survive a direct hit. Vorth had not considered the possibility that his target might not come to him. Instead, Amy Rodriguez came for him from a direction he never expected. Through the rock itself. The canyon system was honeycombed with caves and passages carved by centuries of water erosion, many of them connected to each other in ways that were not obvious from the surface. Amy had spent hours mapping these connections, crawling through spaces barely wide enough for a human body. She emerged from a cave mouth 20 feet above Vorth's position, moving with the silence of someone who had learned to hunt dangerous prey in enclosed spaces. The alien was focused on the main passage, watching for movement at ground level. Amy did not attack immediately. Instead, she studied her target and his weapon. The plasma cannon was connected to a power pack on his back by thick cables. The weapon itself looked too heavy for her to use effectively, but the power supply was a different matter. She had learned about alien technology during her years as a cargo pilot. Most species used similar principles for energy storage and distribution. Overload the power supply and the weapon became a bomb. Amy used her boot knife to cut a length of cable from Moldek's destroyed equipment. Then she fashioned a simple sling, the kind human children had used to hunt birds for thousands of years. Her projectile was a sharp piece of stone, carefully selected for weight and hardness. The first stone struck the power pack's cooling system. Vorth spun around, searching for the source of the attack, but Amy was already moving to a new position. The second stone hit the main power coupling, and she could hear the whine of systems beginning to overload. Vorth realized what was happening just as Amy threw her third stone. This one was not aimed at his equipment. It was aimed at him. The hunter raised his plasma cannon to fire at her position, but the overloading power pack chose that moment to explode. The blast lit up the entire canyon like a miniature star, and when the light faded, there was nothing left of Vorth except a scorch mark on the canyon wall. 3 down, 2 to go. Amy picked up her makeshift sling and began moving toward the next hunting ground. The remaining hunters would be more careful now, more desperate. That made them both more dangerous and more likely to make mistakes. She had learned something important about her enemies. They relied heavily on their technology and their reputation. But technology could be turned against them. And reputation meant nothing if you could not adapt to changing circumstances. Humans had conquered Earth not because they were the strongest or fastest predators, but because they were the most adaptable. They could learn, improvise, and overcome any challenge given enough time and motivation. Amy Rodriguez had both time and motivation, and she was just getting started. Commander Zethkar stared at the scorch mark where Vorth had been standing moments before. 3 of his hunters were gone, 3 of the best operatives in the Veltai Guild, eliminated by a single injured human with primitive weapons and Stone Age tactics. For the first time in his career, Zethkar felt something approaching fear. This was not how hunts were supposed to go. Prey was supposed to run, hide, make desperate attempts to escape. Prey was not supposed to systematically destroy professional hunting teams with improvised weapons and carefully planned ambushes. Commander. Krina's voice came through his communicator, barely a whisper. I have been monitoring the human's movements. She is not behaving like prey anymore. Explain. She is stalking us, moving through the canyon system in patterns designed to cut off our escape routes and force us into positions of her choosing. This is not the behavior of someone trying to escape. This is the behavior of someone hunting. Zethkar looked around the canyon that had become a killing ground. Amy Rodriguez had turned their advantages into disadvantages, their technology into weapons against them, their professional skills into predictable weaknesses she could exploit. New plan, he decided. We are leaving the canyon, open ground, where we can use our superior speed and firepower. She cannot set traps in the open plains, but Amy had anticipated this move. She had spent the last hour preparing for exactly this possibility, using the time while the hunters regrouped to set up positions overlooking all possible exit routes from the canyon. As Zethkar and Krina moved toward the main entrance, Amy was already in position on a ridge 300 meters away. She had modified her wooden weapon during the brief respite, using her boot knife to sharpen one end to a point and wrapping the grip with strips of cloth for better handling. It was no longer just a table leg. It had become something else entirely. A spear, fashioned using techniques that humans had perfected over millions of years of evolution. Simple, effective, and perfectly suited to the hands that wielded it. Krina was using her cloaking field, moving ahead of Zethkar to scout the exit route. The stealth technology made her nearly invisible to most sensors and completely invisible to normal vision. But humans had not evolved to hunt using electronic sensors. They had evolved using pattern recognition, motion detection, and the ability to spot things that did not belong in their environment. Amy watched the slight shimmer in the air that marked Krina's position, the way dust motes swirled around an invisible form, the faint shadow cast by light bending around the cloaking field. Stealth technology was impressive, but it was not magic, and humans were very good at seeing things that were trying not to be seen. Amy waited until Krina was in the optimal position, moving across open ground with no cover nearby. Then she stood up from her concealment and drew back her arm. The modified table leg balanced perfectly for throwing. The spear flew straight and true, powered by muscles that had evolved for exactly this kind of precision throwing. It punched through Krina's energy shield like it was paper, the sharpened oak point finding the gap in her armor with deadly accuracy. The cloaking field failed as Krina collapsed, revealing her form sprawled on the rocky ground, 4 down, 1 to go. Zethkar heard his last subordinate's death scream and knew that the hunt had become something else entirely. This was no longer a business transaction or a professional challenge. This had become a fight for survival against something that should not exist. He activated his personal shield generator and drew his sidearm, a military-grade pulse pistol that could punch holes through starship hulls. If the human wanted a direct confrontation, he would give her one, but on his terms, using his advantages. Human, he shouted across the canyon. I know you can hear me. Come out and face me directly. No more hiding, no more ambushes. Just you and me. Amy's voice echoed back from multiple directions, the canyon walls making it impossible to pinpoint her location. Why would I do that? You came here to kill me. You brought 4 friends to help. Now they are all dead, and you want to talk about fairness? Zethkar felt a chill run down his scaled spine. The voice was calm, controlled, utterly without fear. This was not the voice of prey begging for mercy. This was the voice of a predator discussing terms with food. "What do you want?" he called back. "I want you to understand something," Amy replied, her voice seeming to come from everywhere at once. "You made a mistake when you decided to hunt me. Humans are not prey. We never were. We are the thing that other predators learn to fear." She appeared without warning, emerging from a cave entrance 50 meters away. She was limping slightly, favored her right ankle, and her clothes were torn and dirty. But she moved with the confident stride of someone who owned the battlefield completely. In her hands was the oak table leg, now modified into a weapon that had killed 4 professional hunters. Bloodstains on the wood showed it had been used recently and effectively. Zethkar raised his pulse pistol and fired, the energy bolt searing through the air where Amy had been standing. But she was already moving, rolling sideways behind a rock formation with fluid grace. The bolt struck stone and exploded in a shower of sparks and melted rock. "You missed," Amy called out from her new position. "Let me show you how it's done." She came around the rock formation at a dead run, the improvised spear held low and ready. Zethkar fired again, the pulse bolt crackling past her head close enough to singe her hair. She did not slow down. The third shot should have killed her. Zethkar was a skilled marksman, and the range was close enough for a certain hit. But Amy had studied his weapon during the previous shots, calculated its charging time and energy discharge pattern. She moved just as his finger squeezed the trigger, sliding sideways in a maneuver that took her out of the weapon's targeting arc. Zethkar had time for one moment of understanding. He realized what he was facing, what his guild had tried to hunt and kill. Not prey at all, but something far more dangerous, something that had evolved on a world full of predators and had become the deadliest predator of all. Then Amy Rodriguez was on him, and the hunt was finally over. She stood over his body as the alien sun reached its zenith, the bloodied table leg still gripped in her hands. Around her, the canyon was silent except for the wind moving through the rock formations. 5 of the galaxy's most feared hunters lay dead, killed by one injured human with a piece of broken furniture. Amy looked up at the sky, where she could see the contrails of ships approaching through the atmosphere. Rescue vessels drawn by the energy signatures of the weapons fire. Help was finally coming. She dropped the table leg beside Zethkar's body and began limping toward the canyon entrance. There would be questions to answer, reports to file, explanations to give. But that could wait. Right now, Amy Rodriguez just wanted to go home. She had proven something important today, something that the galaxy was only beginning to understand. Humans were not victims. They were not prey to be hunted by superior species with better technology and longer traditions of warfare. They were the descendants of persistence hunters who had chased mammoths across frozen continents, who had domesticated fire and turned wolves into companions, who had looked up at the stars and decided to claim them all. The galaxy had sent 5 hunters after her. Now the galaxy knew what happened when you hunted humanity. You became the hunted instead. The rescue ships arrived 3 hours after the last hunter fell. Amy Rodriguez sat on a flat rock near the canyon entrance, watching the sleek vessels descend through the purple-tinted atmosphere of Kepler 442b. Her ankle was propped up on another stone, and she had used the last of her medical supplies to clean the cuts on her face and hands. The makeshift spear lay beside her, the oak wood dark with alien blood. She had considered throwing it away but decided against it. Someone would want to examine it, study how a piece of furniture had become the weapon that ended 5 of the galaxy's most feared hunters. Captain Lisa Wong emerged from the lead rescue vessel, followed by a squad of Colonial Defense Force Marines. They moved cautiously, weapons ready, scanning for threats. Amy almost smiled. After what she had been through, a squad of human soldiers looked like the most beautiful thing in the universe. "Amy Rodriguez?" Captain Wong called out as she approached. "That's me," Amy replied, struggling to her feet. "Though I have to say your timing could have been better." Wong looked around at the canyon, taking in the scorch marks, the rockfall that buried Muldek's equipment, and the scattered remains of what had once been elite alien hunters. Jesus Christ. "What happened here?" "I got hunted," Amy said simply. "Turned out they picked the wrong target. The investigation took 6 days. Representatives from 3 different government agencies interviewed Amy, examined the battlefield, and analyzed every piece of evidence they could find. The Veltai Guild sent observers. though they kept their distance and spoke only through diplomatic channels. Amy told her story dozens of times, each telling bringing more disbelief from her questioners. 5 professional hunters, armed with military-grade weapons and advanced technology, killed by 1 injured cargo pilot using improvised weapons and Stone Age tactics. It sounded impossible even to her, but the evidence was undeniable. 5 bodies, each killed by precisely applied force using simple tools and clever tactics. Sylth survived his injuries and provided testimony that confirmed Amy's account, though he refused to look directly at her during his questioning. They underestimated what they were hunting, Amy explained to General Martinez, the Colonial Defense Force officer in charge of the investigation. They thought they were tracking prey. But humans are not prey animals, General. We never were. Martinez studied the tactical analysis reports that covered his desk. You eliminated 5 elite hunters using a table leg and improvised tactics. How is that possible? Amy thought about the question for a moment. How could she explain millions of years of evolution, the development of persistence hunting, the way humans had adapted to become the ultimate predator on a world full of dangerous animals? They relied on their technology and their reputation, she said finally. But technology can be turned against you, and reputation means nothing when you are fighting for your life. They had better weapons, but I had better motivation. They were doing a job. I was trying to survive, the general nodded slowly. And the weapons? How did you know how to disable their equipment? I have been hauling cargo for 8 years, Amy replied. You see a lot of different technologies in this job. Most species use similar principles for energy storage and distribution. Overload the power supply and any weapon becomes a bomb. What she did not say was that humans were natural engineers, problem solvers who could look at any system and find ways to break it or make it work better. That was how they had gone from stone tools to starships in just a few thousand years. The formal report was classified at the highest levels, but word still spread through the underground networks that connected smugglers, traders, and independent operators throughout the frontier sectors. The story grew with each telling becoming legend. Amy Rodriguez, the human who killed 5 Veltai hunters with a broken table leg. Some versions had her taking down entire fleets. Others claimed she had done it while blindfolded. The truth was impressive enough without embellishment. The Veltai Guild quietly removed Amy's bounty from their active contracts and issued new guidelines for hunting human targets. The guidelines were simple. Do not do it alone. Do not underestimate their resourcefulness. And remember that humans are persistence hunters who will turn any environment into a weapon. Other hunting guilds took notice. Contracts for human targets became rare and expensive. Most professional hunters decided there were easier ways to make money than trying to capture members of a species that had evolved on a world full of apex predators. Amy returned to cargo hauling, but her reputation preceded her. Pirates who might have considered attacking a lone human freighter thought twice when they learned her name. Corrupt officials who liked to shake down independent pilots found other targets. Word spread that humans were not easy prey. She kept the table leg mounted on a wall in her ship's common area. Visitors often asked about it, and Amy would tell them it was a reminder. When they asked what it reminded her of, she would smile and say it reminded her that humans were very good at making tools. What she did not say was that it reminded her of something else entirely. It reminded her that her species had not reached the stars by being victims. They had done it by being survivors, adapters, and when necessary, killers who could turn anything into a weapon. The galaxy was slowly learning what humans had always known about themselves. They were not the biggest or strongest or fastest species among the stars, but they were something else, something that had made them masters of their home world and would eventually make them a force to be reckoned with across the galaxy. They were survivors. They were problem solvers. They were the descendants of persistence hunters who had chased prey across continents and turned fire into a tool. And when pushed to their limits, when faced with extinction or capture, they became something that even the most feared predators learned to avoid. They became the thing that monsters checked for under their beds. 6 months after the incident on Kepler 442b, Amy received a message through encrypted channels. It was from Sylth, the Veltai tracker who had survived her attack. The message was simple and to the point. Thank you for not killing me. I have told my people what I learned. Humans are not prey. This knowledge may save lives on both sides. Amy deleted the message without responding, but she thought about it for a long time. Maybe word was getting around. Maybe other species were starting to understand that humans were not victims waiting to be hunted. Maybe the galaxy was finally learning what Earth had taught her children over millions of years of evolution. When you hunt the humans, you better be ready for them to hunt you back, and you better hope they are feeling merciful when they catch you. Amy Rodriguez smiled and went back to her cargo manifests. She had a delivery to make, and the stars were waiting. Behind her on the wall, the oak table leg caught the light from her ship's systems. A simple piece of furniture that had become legend. The galaxy had sent 5 hunters after her. Now everyone knew what happened when you made that mistake. They knew that humans were not prey animals, not victims to be collected and sold. They were predators wearing the mask of civilization, explorers with the hearts of ancient hunters, survivors who could turn any tool into a weapon and any environment into a hunting ground. The stars belonged to humanity now, and the galaxy was just beginning to understand what that really meant.